I would say the evidence is weighted on a Scottish victory. I just haven't seen enough from England in their first two wins to see why they'll beat Scotland. I've seen 40 minutes of Scotland to see that they could beat England. And if I just look at the teams when they come out, I'll probably say Scotland 1 to 23 shade it. They're at Murrayfield. I think the bookmakers are pretty close to spot on as they normally are. There's not going to be much in it, but Scotland by between 2 and 4, yeah.
Hello, hello. We are approaching the third week of the Six Nations, which means it's time for us to talk again to the great man, Stuart Barnes, formerly of Bath and England and British Lions, writes brilliantly for the Times about all matters to do with rugby. We've had a brief pause on the Six Nations, and now it's time to get straight back into it. Is it Ireland's team of destiny? I mean, they're maybe the biggest story in rugby at the minute, Ireland. They haven't got the biggest game this week, I don't think, but we'll see where we get to. We'll also reflect on Stuart's predictions from last week as well. Hello, Stuart. How are you doing?
Very well, Stig. What did I predict? I have no memory of that.
I think what you predicted was, and I could just make anything up now and you'd have to believe me, I think you went all home wins last time. And you nearly got it because Scotland nearly pipped France, but they didn't in the end. I think you went for a wild card prediction of Scotland beating France.
Yeah, well, that's not too bad, is it? And I'm not going to be like Scotland. I'm not going to keep moaning about the referee. What's done is done.
Yeah, but the question, maybe the first thing we should talk about, Stuart, is will Scotland beat England? I mean, the Calcutta Cup is the big game of the week. Just to go through the games, it's Ireland, Wales, Scotland, England, France versus Italy. And just because the closest game, the game I suspect is hardest to call, Stuart, is Scotland-England, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. When you look at it, if you strip away nationalism and patriotism, call it what you will, this is a game that Scotland should win. They've only lost one of their last 6 to England. They've won the last 3. Neither side are playing brilliantly, but Scotland had 40 minutes in Cardiff where they looked very good. They've got home advantage. So, yes, Scotland are favourites. And that's why this week I changed, not my principle, but tack for the one game. I've always talked about England. Their problem is they're not concerned at all about performance. And if they don't get the performance right, they'll never find a way to beat the higher rated teams. But this is one of those games where there are so many other factors at play that winning is all that matters. Psychologically, if England win this, they're 3 for 3, whereas the last couple of years they've been 2 for 3 and then they've lost to the big 2. You can see this as a Groundhog Day if England lose, just going the same way. If England win, even though they may not play brilliantly, they're 3 for 3 and they can convince themselves then and have an opportunity to look at their performance, how they play against Ireland and France. People do not expect them to beat Ireland and not many expect them to beat France away. So those are games where if England have won their first 3, they can really throw everything at it and also in that process begin to explore the future.
Do you think actually if they do win and they go 3 from 3, having got to the semi-finals of the World Cup and pushed South Africa very, very hard, you're a bit of a sceptic about the England team. I'm a bit of a sceptic about the England team. But you know what? If they open up 3 for 3 in the Six Nations and they did what they did in the World Cup, at some point do we not need to hold our hands up and go, maybe we've undervalued them, maybe we've underrated them?
No, not at all. Not until they're beating Ireland or France. England always say, under Steve Borthwick, it's about winning. So I don't buy into that. They nearly beat South Africa. You can't have it both ways. England was saying, well, okay, we only beat Samoa 18-17, but we won. That's all that matters. So if they lose by a point to South Africa, that's all that matters. So that's why I get back to this thing about this week and the centrality of this game in Steve Borthwick's career as England manager. This is a game where I think for the first time it's so on a knife edge between the two teams. It's away from home. If England win this one, they can say, when they say we're finding a way to win, they really are. Finding your way to win by beating lesser teams means nothing except you have no imagination. I think if England beat Scotland anyway, anyhow, they're on the march. But it doesn't turn England around. For that to happen, they've got to start turning those pragmatic performances, as they're so proud of, into wins. And that means Ireland and France. Scotland is the start, though.
Yeah, we talked about from the very beginning, our first program about the Six Nations. It always felt that the battle for third place was England, Scotland, and it could. And you said actually it could come down to the Calcutta Cup when that does happen. Is the Calcutta Cup a thing? I mean, when I was growing up, I remember the Scottish Grand Slam. That was in 1990 when Scotland beat England, and it was a huge old thing. It was a scrappy affair. And Scotland had these teams. They had these teams that were pretty good, but never amazing. But a couple of years, they turned it around. I remember they had John Jeffrey. Do you remember him? The flank.
Yeah, I played. He was my roomie in the Hong Kong Sevens when I was about 19 years of age in my first year at university. What an experience!
Really?
Great man, John.
I can't imagine you playing sevens, Stuart. Is that unfair?
No, I was. I hate to say this, but I was a very good sevens player in
What
my
are you?
Yeah.
Quick, were you a bit shiftier then in your youth, Stuart? Is that what you're saying?
Stig, I was still. I'm not going to say much here, but I could shift over 20 metres. I slowed down as I got older, but I could shift. You've got to be quick to get away from these big buggers when you play rugby.
Well, that's exactly true. But Scotland. But I guess the question is, and Gregor Townsend has given an interview this week where he said he was so driven by his experience watching Scotland in the early 90s. I think that 90s team. That when he played, it all got too much for him, and he was so fired up, and the old enemy and all of that stuff. Do you think there's something in this fixture? I don't know how much this was true when you were playing. It's true now, where it sort of stands alone as a fixture that has its own meaning.
Yeah, it does. I mean, a lot of it is a cultural thing. I grew up in Wales, so for me, in the Six Nations, it was about England playing Wales. England, Scotland. I never thought it had quite the same cachet because Wales were perceived as a traditionally greater rugby nation. And the whole politics of Wales, England was fascinating. But the Calcutta Cup within the game of rugby itself, not the wider cultural implications, is very big. There's no doubt at all there is excellent animosity when you're in the England squad and you turn up in Edinburgh for the game and you walk on the pitch. There's a lot of the Scottish fans sound as if they work in London in high-flying jobs, but they give some fair old clat, and it's a heated occasion, yeah. And that 1990 win, that was a sort of Scotland were able to channel the intensity of it, and it's always easier for the smaller nation. And when I say that, I don't mean any disrespect to Wales or Scotland, but England of the United Kingdom is the biggest, most affluent, most powerful nation. So bloodying the English nose is always something which they take great pleasure. And Scotland now are in a fascinating situation because they're not the underdogs anymore. So they've got to maintain that same sort of psychological edge, but tell themselves, look, we don't have to go mad here because we're better than them if we play our rugby. So there's England, who are the bigger, more powerful nation with all the assets and resources. They're the ones who have got to say, look, we got to go up there and we have got to land some punches hard and fast on Scotland.
What's Murrayfield like as the Scottish home advantage? How much does that play into things?
Bagpipes are quite eerie. When you're English, you don't need bagpipes too often. Flower of Scotland, they give a good old rendering of that 1960s folk song. It's gets you going. It's tough. It's pretty tough. Having said that, the Great England teams have gone up there and they've put Scotland away. But this isn't a Great England team. But this is an England team going to a tough, hostile venue. And if they win, that'll do for me. I won't be writing Monday about the quality of their performance. I'll be looking forward to the performance when they play Ireland and France. If they beat Scotland, uh, they're, well, I dare I say, I think Scotland probably have more creativity. I think England's kicking game that they played in the World Cup, the game they played against South Africa, would suit them against Scotland. They don't want. They can't have a broken field for Finn Russell, Tui Pelotu, and Hugh Jones. They're very good, and whilst there's been a lot of kudos for the England defence, I've seen them outflanked, cut up in the inside, and they may be trying something ambitious, but Scotland have a midfield that could cause chaos. I see Blair Kinghorn is back in their squad. He's getting better and better since he's gone to Toulouse. That magic's rubbing off. Scotland are very dangerous. I think Scotland are far more likely to score tries than England from open play. Therefore, I think England close the play, and they play. They're bold enough to play primarily as they played in the World Cup, as they played under Borthwick in last year's Six Nations. And if that means box kicking and pressure, that's what I think they might have to do. I would like that. That doesn't mean, though, that you don't play any rugby. But when you look at the England offensive play so far in the Six Nations, there hasn't been a great deal of rhythm to it. So you don't want to say, look, keep working on your attacking game. If it's not functioning, if it's 30% from being up to scratch internationally, you don't go to a game like Scotland away and say, what the hell, we'll keep trying to do it. You play to your strength. England's strength is a close game. Scotland's, I think, is an open game.
Do you think it's fair to say that both teams, I mean, I know you say that the result matters more than anything else for the Calcutta Cup, not the performance, but it strikes me that neither side has had a statement win, really, in recent times that you can hang your hat on. I mean, that first half for Scotland-Wales, if there was then a second half like that, that would have been a moment, wouldn't it? That would have been Scotland laying down the gauntlet and saying what a team we are, but they didn't finish it off, although they won the match. England in the World Cup, they won the games they should have won, not always brilliantly. Then they lost the game they should have lost. Scotland, kind of the same thing actually in the World Cup. They won and lost the games they should have won and lost. I will, if you were a coach of either of those teams, this is an opportunity actually, not just to scrape through and put a result down that actually resonates and says this is who we are.
Well, that's true to a certain extent. I think it's certainly true of England, who just don't have any of those big wins. I think since they beat Ireland maybe 3 years ago, and that's it. That's it, really. For Scotland, I do think it's more difficult because Scotland should be at the stage where they're saying it's England at home. Yeah, it's the Calcutta Cup and it's great brouhaha and all that, but we should beat England. We're a better team than England. We've beaten them the last 3 games. We've beaten them twice at Twickenham. Therefore, I think for Scotland, they're under massive pressure to win. England, it's slightly different. England are under pressure to win, but for Scotland, a defeat is complete. For Scotland, defeat is regression. Having lost to France, having been well beaten by South Africa and Ireland in the World Cup. So if Scotland lose this one, they're 1 for 3 in the Six Nations. It's regression. If England lose this one, they're 2 for 3. As I said, it's just Groundhog Day. They're not going anywhere, and England have got to start moving, you know?
Interesting that, and whether they have the players to do that, whether they have the sort of impetus to do that. I mean, the more we talk about it, actually, this is a huge game, isn't it, for the identities of the teams? Because as you said, defeat, because the Six Nations comes around once a year, doesn't it? So if this becomes a Groundhog Six Nations or a regression Six Nations, you've got a long time to wait before you can do anything to fix it.
Yeah, it's very tough. Borthwick and Townsend will be aware of. They'll be feeling the pressure on them. And they're both under immense pressure this weekend.
Let's look at the other games briefly before we get your predictions, Stuart. Ireland-Wales in Ireland. This looks like a hiding for nothing for Wales, doesn't it? What does good look like for Wales? Have you ever been in these games, Stuart, where you're probably not going to win? Does the coach even say, you know what? I'm sure a coach can't say, you get within 7 points, you're doing a good job in Ireland. Does anyone ever say that? I'm sure people think that, but do they ever say that?
No, they never say that. Everyone, they'll go there and they will set out to win, but saying you're going to win and believing you're going to win deep in your gut are 2 different things. And Warren Gatland, it's notable that he's talked up performance quite a lot, and he's very pleased with Wales, and Wales are 0 for 2. Therefore, they're going to Ireland now, who are substantially better than either of the opponents that Wales have played to date. So if Wales score a couple of good tries, if Wales make it hard for Ireland, I don't go on this how many points, because that can sort of confuse you. But if the Welsh offensive play functions, their pack stands up to Ireland, and maybe it works in the last 20. Because it does. It's quite a young looking, not very powerful pack, and England. It was disappointing they didn't put Wales away from an English perspective, because you could see Wales didn't have a lot more to go. And I fear for Wales that in that last 20, Ireland might press the afterburn. So I think if Wales in the first hour of this game are competitive and they come up with some good plays and they're clever and there's clear sign of improvement from the Scotland and the England game, then Wales can say, look, we lost 32-15, but we did well. And you wouldn't go, oh yeah, you believe it.
Is there any danger of complacency for Ireland? From what I read about them when I watch them play, it feels that, and again, we talked about this after the World Cup, Ireland had a chance in that World Cup to say, you really are the number one nation in the world, and it didn't happen for them. And I just wonder whether they've got a long time till the next World Cup, and doing statement Grand Slams, statement Six Nations domination, which is definitely in their capability, maybe will be their answer to that World Cup disappointment, because that World Cup was a moment where people could say, I know Ireland are number one in the world, but are they really? And it didn't happen for them. And maybe their only way of showing that they're just how great a team they are, which I think they are, is to never let up in the Six Nations.
New Zealand, a narrow defeat to New Zealand is not an insult in the World Cup. Ireland, if they'd played them the next day, I've said this before and I'll say this till the day I die, might easily have beaten New Zealand. There was nothing in it, and that's how sport goes sometimes. Ireland, there's a lot of people this side of the Irish Sea who say Ireland choked. Ireland didn't choke. They just came out narrowly second best. There's no doubt about that. And what you say about Ireland's response to it is absolutely spot on. Ireland have a chance. They had a chance for sporting immortality in the Emerald Isle by winning a World Cup. Didn't happen. But they got a second shot at immortality. No Irish. Ireland have got, I'm not certain. So listeners, don't shout at me. I don't think in their entire history they've won more than 5 Grand Slams. No side in this century has done back-to-back Grand Slams. I think France did it 97, 98. So we're talking over a quarter of a century. Ireland have never had a team that has done. Ireland hardly had Grand Slam winners. This team does it back-to-back. They are an immortal Irish team. There is no doubt. No one can say they are not the greatest Irish team of all time. If you've been involved in those 2 years, then you're part of something very special indeed. And that will fuel them. And the other thing about Ireland is, I said about Gatland has been talking up performance and not results. Ireland persistently do this under Farrell, and they're right. And that's why you shouldn't get complacency, because they're not thinking about beating Wales. They're thinking about the quality of their performance. And because they've been doing this for years, what happens if the quality of their performance isn't good? They have generated so many different ways whilst pursuing this quality of playing rugby that they can say, right, how's the way we check back, rein it in and win this game? They'll know how to do that in a way that when England, who don't have the quality, with 10 minutes to go, are playing a very good team, they go, how do we win this? And they don't have the experience, the mental edge to do that. And it's a big difference. And that's why there's no doubt Ireland won't be where they were for the game in Marseille against France, but they'll be high enough to win this game. And if things go wrong, they will have. They've tested their game to the limit in various different ways. They'll find a way to go somewhere and eke out the win. They're just, there's too big a discrepancy between the teams.
And if they do go back-to-back Grand Slam, we had that conversation about whether they were better than that England Grand Slam winning team before the World Cup in 2003. We might actually do this in the last episode, Stuart, try and work out the top 5 and 6 Nations teams ever. And if Ireland go back-to-back Grand Slams, they'll be in that top five, won't they?
Stig, let's not go ever. Neither of us are that old. Let's start. Let's start. Let's start about 71 when my dad first took me to the National Stadium in Cardiff. It'll be a bit of myth, but we can start. We make it a 50-year look back. The best five, yeah.
The best five in 50 years, yeah. I was born in 1980, so but I watched a lot of videos of that 70s Welsh team, and that'll be it. There'll be a 70s Welsh team in it, won't there? There'll be an England team for the 2000s, and there may well be this Irish team. This is the stakes we're talking about. This is the why they won't be complacent. They presumably want to stamp their foot down on history, don't they?
They will be, as we said, they'll be the greatest Irish team of all time, and they will be one of the outstanding Six Nations teams. They have to be in the top five. Back-to-back Grand Slams is quite something, and it's not just back-to-back Grand Slams. There are 3 games to go, but they've been doing it in some style. They have. What's interesting is Andy Farrell has taken his team away from what is like a meteor, a more muscular, meteor, quicker, more physical game of rugby, but one that is not that different, professional to amateur. It's just stronger. Farrell's team are playing a different brand of rugby. They've got a game plan, where everyone else has a game plan where the coach tells you what to do and they do it. Ireland have a game plan where the coach tells you what to do, but then you've got about 4 or 5 branches from which you can pick and choose your decision. And that's why Johnny Sexton was so good. He was very good in that last second of saying it's option 3. And all the players are running their lines. It's very clever. It looks, and I in the past have sort of said it's brilliant because the players are just making all the decisions. I've watched them again and again and again, and I've realised it's not that straightforward. They are pre-planned, but the flexibility is something we never saw until the game went professional. And it's taken too long of professional rugby to see a team doing something that is fundamentally different, that is fundamentally other. That was amateur. This is professional. I'm delighted that they're doing it. It's a big difference.
Really interesting. Well, let's not crown 6 back-to-back Grand Slam. Good point. They've got 3 games to go. I mean, sport is sport. You never know. And we don't want to be, they won't be the first great team to not see at home. That's perfectly possible.
No, and Twickenham away is, England could find a game to scare them. I go back to my thing. Unless they beat Scotland, I don't think they'll be trusting themselves to find a game to beat them. But England, England can be competitive without threatening to win. They've done that in the last couple of years against Ireland.
And also South Africa. The South African game is a sign of a team that was on paper going to beat them, and they very nearly did something there.
Yeah, but that just takes us very quickly back to Murrayfield. It's why England have to win this game anyway, anyhow. That gives them then the freedom and the confidence to compete against the best 2 and not get close, but maybe even nudge a win.
Let's do the predictions then, Stuart. The 2 of them I think are pretty easy. I'm interested in the middle one. Ireland versus Wales.
Yeah, you can't not go Ireland. I mean, I don't think there's a Welshman in the world who wouldn't say Ireland must win this one. It's not impossible because the word doesn't exist, but it's highly unlikely.
France versus Italy.
France are under pressure here, but funnily enough, they're under pressure to perform because the standard of their game has dipped so badly, and they'll know that they'll sit in that changing room and they won't say, how do we beat Italy? They'll say, how do we play well? And if they play well, they will beat Italy. So that's not sort of changing principle or anything from my point of view. They've got to find a way to play well. They haven't done that. They haven't got Peno into the game. I hope, for the sake of rugby, they start with Nolan Le Garrec at scrum half. I've been calling for him ever since Dupont pulled out. I think Luku was a negative and regressive decision at scrum half, and I think it's hurt them. Bieri starting over Mofana on the wing would be very positive as well. If they come up with those selections, you could see them have a big victory, because Italy tired in that second half against Ireland. They're playing some okay rugby, but playing against France is a hurdle too far. But they could get as close as Wales, but I can't conceive of either of those teams winning or getting anywhere near.
And they're both the away teams as well, of course, which
Yeah.
does make a difference in this. So go on, just to finish us off then, Stuart, Scotland versus England. Your prediction, Scotland are 3 points favourite. I was looking at the betting markets
Are they?
on this. They are the favourites at Murrayfield. Go on then, prediction.
I'm English, so it makes it difficult. If I was born in the country rugby union, then I would say the evidence is weighted on a Scottish victory. I just haven't seen enough from England in their first two wins to see why they'll beat Scotland. I've seen 40 minutes of Scotland to see that they could beat England. And if I just look at the teams when they come out, I'll probably say Scotland 1-23, shade it. They're at Murrayfield. I think the bookmakers are pretty close to spot on as they normally are. There's not going to be much in it, but Scotland by between 2 and 4, yeah.
We will see. We're all going to remember what he said. We're going to check back on this in a week's time. Stuart, it's really looking forward to this weekend's rugby. I'm really looking forward to talking to you after it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve.
Stuart Barnes there. That do come back to us next week when we look back on what's just happened and look forward to round 4 of the Six Nations. And remember, if you love rugby, you should be reading about it in the Times. Stuart Barnes and a whole host of other writers. Brilliant coverage of the Six Nations as it gets nearer and nearer the business end of the tournament. Do check that out. If you like the radio, do listen to me and Asma Mir on Times Radio every Monday to Thursday from 6 o'clock. Thank you for joining.